And I don't want to see that happen to the United States, where it has to go up with other nations to basically support a currency because there's such a collective against it. President Putin and Xi Jinping are meeting at the moment with Russia, China talking. And it's come out in those discussions, Putin saying that 90% of the trade deals between the two nations are made in rubles and yuan.
Our timely joint initiative to move bilateral settlements in national currencies has had a great effect on our trade, and 90% of all settlements are done in ruble and yuan. We've just been discussing the further directions of our cooperation, all in the interests of Russia's and China's economies.
Now, this is interesting because people go, well, what's the big deal about that?
Oh,
Well, there's a thing called the petrodollar, which is any deals that are done have been done in US dollars as opposed to local currency.
Yep.
Now, when that war occurred, where the sanctions were put on Russia with the Ukraine battle, they basically weaponized the US dollar against them and said, right, we're going to block you out of the SWIFT system, which is the cross-border payment system that moves money around. Okay, so what is Russia supposed to do? It's got energy to sell. It's got to still run as an economy and fund its war.
Yep.
It's an interesting sort of situation where they said, we're not backing out. And they've planned for it, you can tell. So they have got the BRICS nations going now. And of course, Russia and China are buddies in that system. And so it's interesting to hear this, that 90%, we've got a number on it now, of the trade deals going on are done in their local currencies and not the US dollar.
Yeah, you know what my thought is on that one? Good on them. Good on them. I think that, again, sovereignty is so important, okay? And keeping yourself independent and control of your own destiny is really important. And by doing that, taking it out of the UN's hands, okay, or the WHO's hands or whoever, it's all basically the same organization, let's be honest. Good on them. It's so important. And I think that, I've seen other countries in the past having all these sanctions involved that have really damaged the country. And most of this is always done out of political reasons and controlling reasons. So no, I'm all for it.
Well, the other side of it is, where does that put the United States moving forward?
Where does it?
And we started the show with, of course, talk about the Federal Reserve. And I think people don't understand the power of that organization and the influence it's had on people's lives, and any central bank on a country for that issue. If they want you to spend more, they lower interest rates. If they want you to spend less, they increase interest rates. And people don't realize how that plays a part when you're there at the grocery store. And I've been seeing it lately where people are lining up for the on bargain at the grocery store just to get reduced meat to put on the table that night.
Sure.
And I'm going, inflation, we're seeing this comment earlier, they're paying ridiculous amounts for rent now. And with inflation, they're buying less. Their dollar is going, not going further. However, having said that, those nations that are in allies of the United States, where does that put that if the US doesn't have its dominance as far as economic power is concerned, when it has a currency that's in most demand around the world? This is an interesting scenario, and it'll be fascinating to see how it plays out.
Yeah, but all the BRICS nations, let's face it, they're the powerhouses, right? They have the ability to destroy the US dollar if they wanted to.
Well, it's changed the game in the sense the US is not just competing against one other individual nation anymore. They've got a collective of nations that have settled up here as far as economics is concerned. Obviously, we've seen allies form certain world wars, and we've seen the power of that, the Axis versus the Allies, etc., as that played out in World War II. But now we're seeing it on economic terms, a battle that doesn't necessarily mean bombs are dropping and bullets being shot. It's one of economic warfare.
Well, it's economic. If you look at the influence that China has on Australia, it's just huge, right? Let's be very frank here. And we're not just even talking about the money. Obviously, almost everything we purchase comes from China. The other side of it is we've got massive infiltration into our government systems. We've got problems right now where we've got genuinely, we've got people from the CCP who are parliamentarians or trying to become parliamentarians here in Western Australia, which influences the mining sector, which is pretty much our economy. It's a clever way to fight a war.
What I don't want to see is so many nations banding together that then you have control between, you lose your autonomy within that system, because we've seen that in the European Union.
Yeah.
We saw how hard it was for Britain to actually get out of the EU and wind itself. And I think many of them are very grateful they didn't go to the euro. They actually stayed hanging on to the British pound there, which made it a lot simpler to exit. We also saw the weaknesses of Greece, who was, back, 10 years ago, was pulling the whole EU down. And you had nations like Germany, who were very prosperous, being dragged down by a nation.
But they had a good way of fixing the prosperous side of Germany. They just put Merkel in charge and solved that problem. Don't worry about prospering anymore.
And I don't want to see that happen to the United States, where it has to go up with other nations to basically support a currency because there's such a collective against it. Then you're getting into murky waters. Then you're moving against sovereignty in that situation.
I agree, but hang on, I thoroughly agree. I mean, I don't want a euro, and I think that each country should have its independence. I think the currency is very much the bedrock of that. So the BRICS thing, I think, is the only way in a short term that they can fight against the US dollar. The US dollar has been the controlling interest. I'm not anti-American in any way, shape, or form, but I'm anti-petrodollar because since World War II, that was when it was introduced to pretty much control the economy of the world.
I think you're anti the system. I think that's
I'm very much anti the system, yeah.
And I can completely understand that, because most people don't understand or appreciate how much the system has controlled their lives.
Yeah.
I think it's interesting too, from an Australian perspective. You think this stuff is out there? It wasn't all that long ago, a few years ago, that Singapore was talking about buying the Australian Stock Exchange.
What? I didn't know that.
Yeah, about 10 years ago.
Wow.
Because what had happened was so many players. What happened was Australia made it so difficult to do. Like, I'll give you the options market, right? Stock options market. They would change the rules all the time, right? And what that requires is all of these trading houses have to get the lawyers in again, change all the rules and all the product disclosure statements and all the internal documentation that goes on. And soon they got to the point, you know what, Australia, you're not big enough. We're just going to pull out because it's just too expensive for us to do business here and trade. The whole options market just dried up once they did that. It got to the point where Singapore was actually considering buying out the Australian Stock Exchange.
Wow. Did not know that. There you go.
So, and I don't think that would have been a good move. Not that I'm anti-Singapore. I think Singapore is fantastic.
Do things very
but
well.
I don't think it would have been good for Australia, because it would have lost. How do Australian companies raise capital if they want to do business? And now that's owned by the Singaporeans.
Right.
It's getting very loss of autonomy there in that scenario. So
look, back many years ago, I did my work experience. I was the first person in Australian history to do my work experience at the Australian Stock Exchange.
That would have been fun.
It was very fun. It was very fun. It was back in the days where there were still boards and all of that. So very, very exciting. And I 15-year-old kid, simple as in this incredible world, and so much going on in my little pinstripe suit,
millions going across those
desks. That's right. And I overwhelmingly, one thing that came out of it when I was talking to stockbrokers and people who are very knowledgeable people and knew lots and lots is, geez, a lot of them know absolutely nothing. It was quite surprising. Like, somebody tried to explain to me options trading. Right. Okay. And I'm 15. Okay.
Yeah.
So, but he's trying to explain that this guy is an options trader.
Right.
Okay. He starts to try to explain it. He got in and he said, look, I'll be absolutely honest with you, mate. I don't really understand it fully myself. It's pretty much a bet. If it goes up or down, that's pretty much it. That was his advice. So I'm glad to see that there's people out here who do proper education, mate, because, that's the great thing with Blu Sky Factory. You do that kind of stuff, mate. You teach people.
There is that ignorance in the finance system as well.
But that's my students who come there on the floor.
My students who come to me, they know more about trading the markets when they finish than the average financial planner will.
Yeah. No, I'm not surprised.
Or the average banker will.
Education is so important, mate, when it comes to these things. Yeah. Because a lot of it depends on your wheelhouse in life. Like this, if it's something you really enjoy and you want to immerse yourself, great. If not, get people like this to help you out. Oh, mate.
Aaron, it's really interesting. I said a couple of years ago that watch the price of gold and silver.
You did. I listened. I didn't buy any, but I listened.
Well, I mean, the last week, silver's just gone crazy.
It has.
It's just been over $48 per ounce Australian, which is a new high for the price of silver in Australia. It hasn't reached the US high, and that's because if you measure the US dollar against that fiat currencies fluctuate in the value and all that sort of stuff. But I mean, gosh, gold has been crazy too. I mean, it was big deal when it pushed past $2,000 an ounce.
Yep.
Now it's charging towards 2,500. It's around about 2,400. Not surprising though, because you look at what's going on both in the banking world, so the industrial level, and also the retail level. So
yeah,
let's consider the industrial level at the moment. The central banks have been buying up gold for years now, particularly China. You remember the big debacle with the Perth Mint where they discovered that it wasn't as pure according to the contract.
Hey, that is McGowan's gold standard. I won't have you sort of to belittle that.
While China's been doing that, it's also been dumping a number of US treasuries recently.
Right.
So on the whole fiat US dollar type thing, the bonds and the IOUs, worth a staggering $53.3 billion.
Say that again.
$53.3 billion. Now, when you drop that kind of money on the market, it causes splashes, right?
Yeah, of course it does.
And people have always seen any uncertainty in the markets, they see precious metals as a safe haven.
Of course it is. Yep.
So a lot have been pushing towards that, going towards that. What's also interesting is I'll come back to the investment mindset in a moment. I'll talk about on the retail level. There's been a big movement I've seen on social media stuff, and maybe it's just the algorithm pushing stuff towards me. But there's a lot of people buying precious metals as a prepper, just in case type of thing. That and particularly in America, they're very concerned with all the illegal immigration that's been going in the United States. That,
of course,
these are volatile times socially for them as well. They feel like they've been invaded internally.
I agree.
And so they have wanted to go, look, if things go terrible as far as the economy is concerned, at least they've got precious metals that they can exchange with, barter with, etc.
Literally a physical thing.
Yeah, it's a physical thing. And they'll even go into junk silver, which is like old coins that have silver elements in it, like the silver dollar in the US.
Sure.
They'll collect that as well, just so they can buy things with it, because it's recognized this is traditional money. This is real money, they call it.
Real money.
Yeah, God's money. And so that's really interesting what's been going on. So we've been seeing that at a retail level as well, people gobbling it up. Also with silver, you've seen an increase in industrial use for it and demand for it. It's the best conductor of electricity.
This I see is a big deal. When it comes to silver, this is, I mean, let's face it, everything's got a circuit board. Everything you buy has got a circuit board in it, right?
Your solar panels and the big push towards green energy, there's silver in those panels and that sort of thing. It'll be interesting to see what they do in a few years if silver goes so high that they'll be dragging the silver out of those panels in terms of trying to recycle and strip them down.
Recycling your teeth the way things are going.
So that's been going on. And what's also been happening as far as the investments are concerned is that they've often thought that silver is undervalued in respect to the gold silver ratio. So it used to be the average is that you could have 16 ounces of silver would buy you 1 ounce of gold. That ratio now is about somewhere between 70 to 80 ounces of silver will buy you 1 ounce of gold. So they've said that this price of silver has really been squashed of time. And so I'm not surprised to see this increase going on.
Because the movement is quite substantial. We're talking about 50% gains, right?
Yeah, it has been since 2022. You've seen the strong US dollar index. It's been fueling, though. They reckon that some of the reasons is the US Fed rate cut has led to that price, rising geopolitical risk, which I've touched on, aggressive buying by China, which I've touched on, and uncertainties ahead of general elections in major economies. A lot of that is there, and some have even pointed to the depreciating Indian rupiah. So that all because India is rising as an economy as well,
big time,
and is doing a lot of deals with the BRICS nations because it's part of that, one of the founding members. So you see all of this going, and you see people going, "Hey, I want to move to precious metals in these uncertain times."
Now, I believe 84% of countries have an election this year. Right?
How many?
84%.
Wow.
It's the highest ever in history, I'm told. Right?
Wow.
So that's got to, let's face it, that's got to create uncertainty. That uncertainty would actually, change values. Yeah. I mean, I'm assuming that's, everything from state level to federal level, but that's a big part of the earth.
Yeah, it's huge. And I think everybody's shaking. Where do we go? What is the world going to look like in 12 months' time?
Oh, no idea, mate. Absolutely none.
Or the other side of November.
I think the future's so bright, you've got to wear shades. When it comes to November, look, I think when November comes and goes,
and we're talking about US elections for those who are not sure what that means.
So in November, if the US election goes one way, I think that, we're going to see massive amount of drilling in America. We're going to see independence financially for America from an energy point of view. We're going to see massive improvement in that country. If we see the other result, I reckon we'll see a civil war. Simple as that. I don't see an alternative.
Yeah.
So, we'll see. Throw away your TV sets when it comes to watching any soap operas, because it's all happening in the US with the guy with funny hair and the guy who falls upstairs, right? It's just, this is such a unique time. I never thought I would sit here ever in my life and care so much about US politics. Never. But yeah, well, I look at there at Mariska, I believe it's, as I say, I do apologize, I can't see that far, but I can read your comment. Amen. I have decided to home to. I think this is kind of a nice way to wrap up in some ways, unless you've got some other subjects to matter. But I love that comment. I've been want to bring it up for a little while because it's so important to home. Whether you buy the house, rent the house, whatever the case, you make it your home with your family. It's so important because, home is where the heart is. Simple as that. And, and I love that sentiment. So thank you very much. I haven't seen you pop up on the feed before. So welcome to Edge Radio Australia.
I think when you also have children, you want to make it a home as well.
You absolutely
Whereas,
do.
The bachelor's life, you're kind of like, I don't really care.
No.
In 6 months, I'll just move on and that sort of stuff. And it's seen more as a consumable in terms of your home.
Oh, very much so. I mean, look, a few minutes ago, I was still probably thinking about, a camper van, so, just keep mobile, go with the flow of life. But when you've got kids, you're absolutely right. Make a home. It's a very important part of your life because, raising kids and having a family is central to so many people's happiness and prosperity. Because as much as we like being, single guys and thinking that we're these great bulls, quite frankly, it's great to have wonderful women in our lives who kind of tame us and make us a bit respectable. And, maybe.
Look, I wouldn't be doing what I'm doing if it hadn't been for my wife's support of what I do. I couldn't do it without her. Absolutely.
Brilliant, mate. All right. Well, that is the end of the show. Thank you very much for being part of it. I better get myself a song lined up. I don't know what we should have on the way out of this, mate. I think actually what we'll go with is something from the Boomtown Rats. See, it's Monday. I don't like Mondays. I don't. Actually, I'm really fond of them. I really am. Why? Because the greater wealth here with this gentleman over here, Derek Whitaker, and of course, the Shave Monkey, who is not in here today, but we love him to bits and very, very thankful to have him as part of our lives. It is Edge Radio Australia, the greater wealth.